if you wanted to play volatility, if that was your kind of game, like short-term trades, that wouldn't be like a bad stock to do it with. If that's like that again, that's not what I do. I tend to hold longer and have like a longer horizon on things. But in the short term, it's going to be kind of rocky. I even saw on that site like one of those firms that just like notoriously short sells companies and comes out and tries to really like poke holes in them. They targeted C3 AI and they dropped it like 10% or more in a single day because they basically just submarined the stock and then people sold off. So like I said, it's really up and down, but we were able to get in early, and then as soon as it was well over 30, then it was time to pull out of that.
Hey, you got Luke Burgess here. Welcome to the Angel Research Podcast. We are doing our podcast today on 420. I know it's not going to come out till Monday, but today's 420, so got my special jacket on. Today I'm here with Jason Simpkins. Jason, thank you so much for being here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, Jason, I want to jump into it. Today we're going to talk about AI.
We're talking about serious business today.
Yeah. And I tell you, I'm a little bit upset. And here's why I'm upset. I'm upset that I did not make money on an AI stock that you recommended. I was just talking to Luke Sweeney a couple weeks ago on this podcast about investing in AI. I want to do it, but it's something I really I don't know a lot about, so I'm intimidated about it. So I'm upset that I missed out on it already.
Yeah, well, we did. Like a lot of people, it's been pretty volatile. Like that's been a really interesting and obviously like trendy play this year.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. The full force of the market and the trend is behind that. So the stock that jumped off, it's a C3 AI.
C3
right?
Okay, so let's start there. Tell me about the company, what they do, like just general stuff.
So C3 AI is they're an artificial intelligence company. I came across them because they were doing preventative maintenance for the U.S. Air Force. Basically, they went through decades of data regarding our jet fighter fleet. When breakdowns occur, what kind of parts go bad, basically. They had all this information, the military did, because obviously the military keeps some pretty diligent records. And so they were able to collect all of this data and synthesize it to the point where they could predict what was going to go wrong with a jet or a plane before it happened.
Wow.
So they could, order the part and either, replace it before it broke down or have it ready in case, something did go wrong as they anticipated, because they were able to kind of figure out the curve of the jet's life and all that stuff. So it was predictive maintenance. And because, if you follow me at Secret Stock Files, I focus a lot on defense sector. That's it. It's all about, national security and the military and defense technologies and what we're working on to improve and be able to take on near-peer adversaries like, Russia and China. And so this is kind of one of the things. That's how I found them. They also do things like, especially for the military, they can do the same kind of data analysis, just doing like basically, it's hard to explain. Other than saying they collect the data and synthesize it and analyze it and basically spit out actionable intelligence, okay? So they could do analyze insider threats. They can basically look at someone. They can go through personnel files in a way. It's the same thing. They can do security clearance and background checks. They can collect information on people and find out who's a risk basically for, flipping or leaking, like we've seen in the past few weeks with the whole big leak that came out of the National Guard. And it can maybe the most important thing it can do is it can model missile trajectory. Okay, so right now a big thing that our military is working on is intercepting incoming missiles. Obviously, this is a big deal because I've talked a ton about hypersonics
We're talking about the hypersonic missiles.
Yeah, and how tricky they can be because they have what are called boost glide vehicles, where they shoot up into low Earth orbit and then they detach from the glide vehicle, or they kind of swoop in and out and then fire down.
It's not a perfect.
It's
curve
not like a parabola. It's not like your traditional ICBM where it goes up and it comes down on the target. And so being able to model missile trajectories is, really important. So that's the kind of stuff that C3 AI was doing. That's what led me to them back in August when I first recommended it to Secret Stock Files, and then we cashed out of that with 130% gain on March 31st. We bought in at like 14, I think was, last summer. And then things just got like, again, like this year, the momentum, the buzz around, artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's really pushed that stock. It went up over like 30. It was at like 32 or 33 when we sold it. Now it's back down around 22.
That was in March.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get back in if it gets closer to or below 20. I'll buy that right to back up and play the volatility on it. And I mean, it's a great long-term company, long-term, medium-term company. In the short term, though, you can see its stock price has just been, up and down based on press, based on the media attention it's got, based on the retail investor interest it's got, based on institutions deciding that they really need to get in on AI. So it's a little bit tricky right now, but I mean, you could probably, trade in and out of that stock over a period of weeks and months, just whenever it's under 25. I wouldn't recommend this as I don't want this to come off as actual investment advice. Like, don't necessarily do this. But like, if you wanted to play volatility, if that was your kind of game, like short-term trades, that wouldn't be like a bad stock to do it with. If that's like that, again, that's not what I do. I tend to hold longer and have like a longer horizon on things. But in the short term, it's going to be kind of rocky. I even saw on that site like one of those firms that just like notoriously short sells companies and comes out and tries to really like poke holes in them. They targeted C3 AI and they dropped it like 10% or more in a single day because they basically just submarined the stock and then people sold off. So like I said, it's really up and down, but we were able to get in early, and then as soon as it was well over 30, then it was time to pull out of that.
Yeah. Do you think ChatGPT has really opened people's eyes to like what AI can possibly do? Because ChatGPT to me is sort of like the second thing the second big development in AI. The first one being the image generator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I think there's something to that in terms of public awareness.
Yeah.
That's 100% true. With respect again to just investing and looking at these kinds of companies, it's been around a while. Like I said, it's been on my radar for a bit. Even before C3 AI, another, and I don't mind giving it away here, but like another one of our stocks in our portfolio is Palantir. A lot of people are pretty familiar with Palantir because it had a really great story. It was very secretive. Like the CIA was one of its earliest investors. Like the CIA actually has an investment arm that they go around investing in this stuff with, and not only that, but also Peter Thiel was involved with it. So it was rumored that they helped catch Osama bin Laden, that they helped find Osama bin Laden. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. That's something they always just kind of wink at. They've never taken specific credit for that, but that's just like the rumor. So when it IPO'd, I think 2 years ago. It was like one of like the buzzier IPOs. But again, I got into that because very similar to C3 AI, everybody's got data, right? Governments especially, government agencies, big businesses, large corporations. We all know they're just collecting scores of our data. They don't all necessarily know what to do with it. At some point, you have to take that data and you have to analyze it and you have to come away with actionable insight. And so they were doing that. And for national security purposes, they worked with not only the CIA, but the FBI, Customs Border Patrol. They were helping hunt down undocumented immigrants. They were doing a lot of stuff. And now, recently, they've been working with Ukraine. So what Palantir did, and Alex Karp, the CEO, actually flew out to Ukraine and met with Zelensky last year. And they've been working on something that they're calling algorithmic warfare. And but what they've effectively done there is they've given Ukraine access to over 300 commercial satellites. Like in companies like Airbus have them, because you're flying planes, you need satellite imaging data. You need to know what the weather's doing all over the world or whatever. Maxar obviously is a huge satellite company, and they have tons of, data that they'll sell, retail basically. The National Oceanic Atmosphere Administration, they have satellites that do thermal imaging to detect wildfires. But they can also detect the same technology, because it's thermal imaging, can also detect muscle flares from artillery, right? So it like coalesces all this data together, and it uses it to identify the positions of the Russian forces. So if a Russian artilleryman fires off a mortar, that gets picked up on thermal satellite imaging. And so do all these other things, whether they're moving massive equipment or whatever, they can get that, put it all together in real time, and then immediately give Ukrainian soldiers access to it on basically an iPad, a tablet computer out in the field, where they can see the updated map. They can look at it the same way you would look at Google Maps and zoom in, except they're doing it in real time, looking at Russian positions, and then using that to target and then destroy. They could basically, imagine ordering a missile strike with an iPad, or like an artillery strike with an iPad, and that's what it does, and that's what Palantir is facilitating there. And so when we talk about AI and its kind of use, we're not necessarily talking about a sentient robot that is going to talk to you or whatever. That may be fun. It's cool to be able to interact with a computer like it's a person or whatever, but it's really about collecting and synthesizing data and processing data in new ways, and connecting the dots in ways that they hadn't previously been connected.
Yeah, when I think AI on the battlefield, I immediately go to like Terminator. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
At least not for now, right?
Not for now. It's going to get there. It will get to the point, and honestly, it's so kind of grim in a way to think about, but it's a step forward in that soon it is just going to be our robots fighting like
robots
China's
versus robots, not people versus
and
people.
And it's, if you look at it, and I did talk about this recently, I'll have to see if I can dig it up, but you can look at a chart at basically war-related fatalities by year, which obviously peaked very high in World War II. And then you can see it trend down generally, even though it'll spike up in like the 60s, like the Vietnam War, what have you. You'll see little spikes when wars happen, but the overall trend overwhelmingly is down. And that's because increasingly technology is taking over the roles that were once, done by soldiers. So that's going to continue. And the other thing about, like, again, we can talk about this, it's separate but connected to AI is like drone swarms, right? I've talked about how a company in Kratos, they make drones. Well, they make drones that are small if they can fit under a jet's wing and deploy and fly as companion aircraft. And they can fly ahead and look at enemy defenses, gauge or, help with targeting effectively, like target identification, even draw fire, drop their own ordnance, all that stuff, and protect an F-35 that cost magnitudes more. You have these fighter jets that cost billions and billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, versus a $5 million drone. So one's more expendable than the other, and it protects the plane as well as the pilot's life. And that whole idea of having companion craft is going to be transferable to every branch of the military. There are and will be, autonomous submarines that will accompany our carrier groups, that help protect our ships at sea.
Maybe like our little RC cars next to our Humvees?
Or next to troops. There are troop battalions right now. When I was writing a report about LiDAR, I came across a company that makes basically a little robot truck that just drives around and searches the perimeter. And it uses the LiDAR to look for things that the human eye isn't going to detect, and it can use thermal imaging to pick up on that stuff and alert a battalion of troops to a potential ambush. They can identify IEDs. They can identify these things, as well as assist in things like communications, logistics, targeting, and all that kind of stuff, all that logistical support that you really, really need in the battlefield. And again, when you get back to something like the war in Ukraine, the reason Ukraine has been so successful against Russia and Russia has failed so miserably is because the Ukrainians have done a much better job of that. They've done a much better job in terms of the logistical and, strategic and getting people where they need to be to the right spots at the right time, and basically hitting Russia before Russia hits them. They've done, and it's because of companies like Palantir, and it's because of the technological advantage that they've had.
Yeah, well, I mean, history has shown us technology wins wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just might; it's smarts.
That's why, it was a lot of the greatest leaps and technological leaps we've had. Whether it's the internet, fiber optics, it has its roots in the military. And again, that's basically the premise of why I launched my trading service. We're determined to take advantage of all those things and profit from them, like we did with C3 AI.
Yeah. Do you think defense is the biggest? I mean, it's certainly one of the biggest sectors that's going to benefit or that's going to take advantage of the AI. Is it the biggest? Do you think?
I don't know. It's hard to say because here's the thing. It's going to be in every industry, every conceivable industry. And one of the focus of one of my latest recommendations, which I can't talk about. Well, I could talk about it, but I can't give away the company. But they basically make the brains of the robot, right? They make supercomputers, and they make things like chassis and servers and cables and the CPU. But it's all ruggedized. And again, I found this company because of the work they do with the military. And what's important is that, again, if you're going to be in a combat situation, whether you're going to be in a plane, whether you're going to be in Iraq in the desert, you need to have a computer that can operate in a dust storm in Iraq or in extremely cold weather in Northern Europe or whatever. So you need to have technology that works when you need it, and it needs to be able to process things very quickly on site. So talking about edge computing here, it's got to be able to process, on site rather than at a server farm somewhere in the Midwest or whatever. You need that kind of instantaneous thing. So there's this company that does that, and they have a lot of hardware and software that goes into the P-8 Poseidon aircraft. But they're also very big in the autonomous trucking sector, right? So there is a good example of an industry that is going to benefit greatly from AI and stuff like drones. I've got the stats. It's 80,000 truck drivers short, both in 21 and 2022. There was a labor shortage of about 80,000 truck drivers. So autonomous trucks are what trucking companies and companies like Amazon are going to rely on to fill that labor shortage. And that labor shortage is not unique to trucking. If you look around, and we all know it anecdotally, you go to restaurants and they're short on staff. There's not enough waiters. You go to hotels, they're short on maids. You go to even airlines are having to cancel thousands of flights a year because they don't have the pilots. A pilot calls out sick and they got to cancel, a dozen flights. And there's these labor shortages. That's where this stuff comes in. Okay, right now there's about 10 million open jobs in the United States, and that's according to the labor statistics. That's the Fed, and only about 6 billion or million unemployed people. So 10 million job vacancies, 6 million unemployed. There's no way to bridge the gap other than to have robots and drones do these jobs for us. So that's where we are where we are. I think I read that 90% of long-haul trucking could be autonomous by 2030. That's kind of the rate of growth.
Are we talking fully autonomous, or is there still somebody going to be
There's two types. That's a good question. There's I think most autonomous trucking right now, there are trucks right now that are just driving on the road by themselves. That exists. But there's also something called leader-follower technology. And this is just as important. It's something, too, I've talked about with respect to Kratos because they were one of the companies that really helped develop it and bring it along. And leader-follower technology is where you have one manned truck driving and then a bunch of autonomous trucks following behind it, and they'd follow the leader. So that for convoys, for trucking convoys, clearly would work well. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, it is just going to be once, and we all know how hard they're working on the self-driving car technology. Tesla is really doing us a solid by running over so many pedestrians to get this right. But that's ultimately where it's going. Obviously those kinks are going to have to get worked out. But if you look, like I said, you want to be a long-term investor, you want to look 5-10 years down the road. you this is obviously a technology you'd want to be a part of.
I like this follow the leader technology. It's kind of like a highway train.
Yeah, and that has been used. I did talk about it here before, but with Kratos, and again, they're a company that makes so much like equipment for the military. But a year or two ago, they had a problem, beet farmers in the Midwest, where, again, shortage of commercially licensed truck drivers. Because if you're going to drive a beet hauling truck, a sugar beet hauling truck, you need to have a license to operate a loader like that. And so they didn't have enough drivers. They deployed leader-follower technology so that they could haul the beets to the processing facility from where they were going, from basically the depots that they were being hauled, the supply stacks, to the processing facility. And I'll tell you something else that's really neat about the leader-follower technology. You don't build it into a car. They will give you a kit that you can put on a normal car, that you will attach to the steering wheel and attach to the car, or the truck in this case, and then it's ready to go. So you don't need a ground-up self-driving car. You can get the applique kit and stick it in there on the trucks you already own, and it's less costly than buying another like big, expensive, or just inherently autonomous truck. It's going to require less, maintenance. It's going to be easier to maintain because if something does go wrong with it, you only need to get the kit fixed. You could take the kit off the truck and continue to drive the truck, that kind of stuff. So there's ways that this is going to work in the immediate term and in the short term before we arrive at any kind of utopia where trucks are just driving our goods on their own and we're all just sitting in self-driving cars sipping wine. But I'm sure we'll get to that point, but for now we're here.
Yeah. My father works in a tennis court company, and he's always had to make deliveries, and there's like these huge deliveries that need to be made, and yeah, he would save tens of thousands of dollars a year with just implementing this leader follow technology. That's very interesting.
I mean, it's all kind of, and it like I said, it really is ubiquitous at this point. It's kind of getting there. You can put it even like a smaller, more granular scale. So like I must sound like kind of weird because I've been talking to people about this incessantly, but like in February I was on a road trip and I dropped into a McDonald's and there were no cashiers there. It was just a kiosk in the middle of the store, and you would go up to the kiosk and put your order in there on the computer and then take a number and then go sit where you wanted to sit, and then they would bring it out to you. And so like that was the first experience I'd ever had like that at a fast food restaurant. But this is the type of thing where necessity is the mother of invention. You're McDonald's. You can't hire enough cashiers. You can't get enough people to do these menial labor tasks. So now you're filling in the gaps with a kiosk where people can order and bring it out. And what's key about this, too, is that the human employees, some of them were still there. The ones that, wanted jobs or were there to work, they were there and they were able to focus on like higher order concerns. This was without question the cleanest, most well-managed McDonald's I've ever been in my life. Like it was so like peerless. And it's because while the machine was taking my order, while the kiosk took my order and did all that, they were able to go around and focus on higher order stuff. They were straightening out basically online pickup orders. They were, making sure everything was going all right in the kitchen, that they weren't shorthanded there, and that the food was coming out fast, and that everything was hot. They were on top of everything because they didn't have to be bolted to a cash register. And so on that level, you're seeing it. And it was also, incidentally, McDonald's also just opened in Texas. It was like experimental, like almost, and again, it's not fully automated, but it's mostly automated. You put your order in on the app, you pull up to the drive-thru, and your order comes down on a conveyor belt, and you never talk to a human. And there are humans inside making sure everything's moving along and getting things in the right place. But you, as the consumer, never have to interact with with a human. And Luke, I'll tell you something, there are millions of introverts out there just like me that love to avoid human interaction.
I've been thinking, when can I get my hair cut from an AI robot so I don't have to I swear I'm thinking this. Like, when absolutely.
Yeah, just like finally, you just
don't have to talk to the hair
all this uncomfortableness. Like, no, it's just you just deal with the robot, you just deal with the technology. And again, I know, like the fear mongering side of it, the sci-fi side of it, that makes it all feel dystopian. At times, it creates like this kind of dark cloud over like the possibilities. But in reality, when you see it in practice, it's like, oh, this is kind of nice.
Yeah, I think there's a similarity between the internet and the AI, because in the 1990s, it was dark. It was all scary. You're going to get killed when you go online. And now people are like, yeah, whatever.
It's an immutable part of life. I mean, the internet, like everyone uses it almost every minute. I mean, everything. So
our grandmothers are using the internet.
Exactly. And I think AI is going to be sort of like that. I don't think it's going to be quite as transformative as the internet was. I think, obviously the internet is the internet. It's like the invention of electricity itself. I mean, it was game changing. But with AI, I think it's going to be one of these things that as people see it more and get more comfortable, and they might not even recognize it as such in the moment. They might not see it at McDonald's kiosk the same way I did and be like, this is the robot takeover.
They just see it as a new way that McDonald's
it's just like,
things.
we're just doing this now. Yeah. Like, okay, but that is it. It's just kind of gradually going to get absorbed into our way of life. People won't think anything about having a drone deliver their Amazon package. They won't think anything about this kind of stuff. We'll live in a time where ultimately, I don't know, maybe our grandchildren will not know a life where they had to get a driver's license, So
I would love that.
Yeah, right? So, I mean, that's the progression. That's how society works. I mean, and it's funny because sometimes I think about this and I think about some of the fear-mongering headlines I see and stuff, and it really just reminds me of, like, the old John Henry story. Like, it's the old, like, steel-driving man, like, oh, no, like, the steam steel driver is going to take all of our jobs, Like, yeah, and you know what? Railroads are going to get built faster for it, and then you're going to have better jobs. You're not going to have to stand out in the sun with a hammer pounding railroad spikes into the ground. Yeah. It's not as bad as it seems. Like, you don't have to die for it, John Henry. Like, you can just go to McDonald's and get your burger. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. It's something that I've been asking all writers, and I feel like among writers, it's kind of like the secret question. Do you use ChatGPT?
No.
You don't use ChatGPT?
I tried using it once and I couldn't figure it out. I'm almost ashamed to say it because I'm like, I'm kind of felt like I was too old for this shit. I was like, I don't know, like, what am I supposed to tell this thing? What are people typing in here to get, like, this, like, prompt stuff? But also, it's my nature. I really love writing. I studied it at college. I've always loved writing. I love thinking about it. I love, just words and word games. And so for me, that would take the fun out.
Yeah, have something else to do it for you. Yeah. So in music production, there's like AIs making music now. Like, what's the fun in that? Who wants to have just a program, an AI machine to make a song for you? That doesn't.
To me, I could see it being like ambient noise or something. Like some kind of like
kind of background thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, what do you go to a concert where they just it's the AI bot. Everyone enjoy, like, clap your hands.
You're not going to enjoy making that as much as you are.
No,
physically.
Certainly not. No, I don't think you're going to enjoy listening to it as much either. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I think people are afraid we're going to lose, like real music or something, or creative impulse or jobs for creators. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think that so AI renderings are going to put artists out of work. Right. I think there's always going to be a place for that. I mean, if that weren't true, like, it's almost like saying, like, oh, well, we have photography now. I guess this is the death knell for painters. Like, it's just kind of like, no, it's just a new medium.
I'm sure somebody said that back then.
Yeah, like, some painter just punched a hole in his canvas. Like, now I'm screwed.
Okay, so let me ask you this: what's the next thing, the next development, do you think, for AI? Because what we've seen was that we had image generators. Now we have text generators. Yeah. Now we're having video generators. What's after that? What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not that guy. I'm not Elon Musk or whoever.
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
whoever's
understand.
job it is going to come up with. It's a good question. It's a thought provoking question. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's already. Yeah, I don't have an
You don't
answer
know.
for that one.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, okay. Where do you think the money is going to be? Like, is it going to be in the software, in the hardware, both?
All of the above.
All of the above,
Yeah. Like I said, the company that I just recommended, it's only it's still under $4 a share, and they make hardware. Like I said, mostly. I mean, they make the supercomputers. They make the actual brains of the robot. So no matter what kind of software or task performing software you want to program into it, that's your business. But it can work just as effectively in an autonomous truck as it can in a spy plane. So, I think that's a great way to look. All these software companies, C3 AI is often referred to as the only quote unquote pure play in AI right now. I've been working on trying to find just kind of like others that are a little bit more direct because I'm like, how can that be true? You can't be the only one, right? And then, but like I said, all these companies that, work on drones, and, honestly, a lot of these heavy hitting companies too, the big ones, they're going to catch up. Companies like IBM. I mean, IBM's been working on this kind of stuff since Watson. Remember when it had this robot on Jeopardy or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, this has been going on
Deep
a bit.
Blue. Yeah.
Exactly. And so all those companies, whether it's IBM, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they're all going to wet their beaks in it. They're all going to get a taste of this. But I do think it's important now, like I said, to lock in on little companies. I mean, C3AI is a good example of one that was a small company, and now it's probably going to get a lot bigger. The other company that I recommended is under $4 a share. That's a small cap company. So there are smaller plays out there if you can find the facilitators. If you want to look for them, if you want to go hunt for them, they're there.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
Where is the hub of AI? Is it still in Silicon Valley?
Hey, as far as I know, and it's certainly if you're going to talk about investing or anything like that, because I mean, what's the alternative really? You can't invest in a state-owned company in China, right?
Yeah.
So like if someone's going to come up with competing technology, we know who it's going to be, and it's not France, right?
Yeah.
So like that's I've never I feel like I repeat myself a lot on this podcast sometimes, but I've never been a China guy, and I'm not that guy. I'm not a China guy. So I think it's got to be United States, and I know there's been a big initiative to reshore a lot of especially like semiconductor jobs and manufacturing jobs, and kind of rejuvenate our tech sector a little bit in terms of like the actual production and get attract talent from the STEM proficiencies and stuff like that. Get more scientists, get more engineers, and the United States is. We're always going to be great at that. We're always going to attract talent, at least until the next civil war happens or whatever. We're going to attract talent. And you can see other countries don't necessarily have that. And a good example of that would be like Russia. There's a lot of brain drain from Russia because you got people fleeing a war. You've got people fleeing autocratic regimes. Like, despite what their propaganda is going to tell you, people don't like to live under dictatorships. They don't like to
that, yeah.
have, their, politicians assassinated and have their children sent off to invade countries that they could care less about. They don't want that. So as long as America is around doing what it's doing, it's going to attract that kind of talent. It's going to attract talent to its universities. It's going to attract talent to its government jobs. It's going to attract talent to Silicon Valley and all the big companies back there, because this is a capitalist society and you can make a lot of good money doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's all very exciting to me. I can't wait to see what the future holds for AI. I mean, I think that we are on the cusp of another tech revolution in the next 5 years. I think we might not recognize society, to be honest with you.
Yeah, or like I said, I think it'll be so kind of gradual that it'll just be normal. And yeah, you might look back on it the same way you look back at a picture from like 1997 and you go, oh yeah, the world was different back then, But at the same time, this stuff creeps in so gradually Just like one day you wake up and it's here and it's a part of the culture and it's a part of the lexicon and it's part of like everybody's, kind of shared collective focus and imagination.
One day I had a pager, the next day I had a smartphone.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then like no one thinks twice about that anymore. That was a tremendous leap of technology. And like, how quickly I forgot about my iPod? And my iPod was a tremendous technological leap when I first got it. I was like, this is incredible. I don't have to burn CDs anymore. Burning CDs was an incredible technological for me when I was a teenager. Like you hit these milestones, but then you're right on to the next one,
Yeah. Anyway, Simpkins, thank you so much for being here.
No problem.
Thanks for joining us on the Angel Research Podcast. We will see you next time.